giving them very few provisions. They have to build their own shelter, they have to make their own fire, they have to find their own food. And the individuals are divided into tribes that are pitted against each other in physical and mental challenges for rewards like food or immunity from elimination. And the challenges are formidable. Everything from diving 50 feet down to the ocean floor to retrieve an object, to eating exotic, slimy critters, to jumping off of a high cliff into water and swimming some insane distance. The challenges are designed so that members of tribes have to help one another if their tribe is to prevail, and they really need to prevail. Otherwise, that tribe loses a challenge, and they have to attend the tribal council where tribe mates must vote off the island, as it were, one of their own. And at the halfway point in the game, the tribes are merged into one. Individuals no longer compete as tribes, but as individuals. And the last person standing, the sole survivor, is the recipient of $1 million. People cannot get enough of the program. It began 18 years ago, believe it or not, and it's still going strong, making it the most successful reality TV show ever. At one level, it's a mystery as to how the Survivor format continues to attract so many viewers. At another level, it makes perfect sense. We are, after all, raised in a culture that values rugged individualism. We pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps. And it's really easy and convenient to go through entire days and accomplish a great deal without any face-to-face interaction with a real-life, flesh-and-blood human being. We pay for gas at the pump. We do self-service at the grocery store. We do online banking. We send electronic correspondence. We find endless entertainment and even inspiration on the web or TV. As the story goes, a grandfather took his 2-year-old granddaughter out for her favorite treat of ice cream. And he parked the car, and he lifted the little girl out of her car seat, and then he offered her his thumb and said, "Sweetheart, it's a busy street. You need to hold on tight till we're inside the ice cream shop, okay?" The granddaughter took one look at his thumb and then wrapped her own left fist around her own right thumb and said, "No, thank you. I can hold my own." That individualism even tends to dominate our understanding of our relationship with our Maker. I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses, and he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own. God is my co-pilot. But here's the thing. Almost nothing of significance happens in our relationship with God that does not happen in and through community. The story of the gospel is a story about community. When we baptize, when we celebrate communion, when we worship, we do it together in community. Prayer itself is an act of community. The prayer Jesus taught the disciples begins with "Our Father," not "My Father" or "Me and you, God." Give us this day. Lead us not into temptation. Forgive us our debts. Almost nothing of significance happens in a person's relationship with God that does not happen in and through community. We don't come to faith through a vacuum. Our reading this morning is a portion of the 15th chapter of the Gospel according to John. It's part of Jesus' farewell discourse to his disciples. He's about to leave them, and so he's teaching them. He's reminding them of the essentials. "This is my commandment," he says, "that y'all love one another as I've loved you. No one has greater love than this, than to lay down one's life for one's friends. And y'all are my friends if you do what I command you. I don't call you servants any longer, because a servant doesn't know what the master is doing. But I've called y'all friends, because I've made known to you everything. You did not choose me, but I chose you. I'm giving you these commandments so that you may love one another." These are some of the easiest happiest verses in the Bible. The words are unassailable. Love one another. You're my friends. This passage is the first time Jesus uses the word friends in relation to the disciples, and he couches it within the framework of love. It has to do with heartfelt camaraderie. He's still master, and they're still disciples, but they're also friends. It's friendship that characterizes Jesus' relationship with his disciples, and it's friendship that is to characterize our relations with one another. The German theologian Jürgen Moltmann suggests that friendship may or may not include equality, but it always includes affection and respect. It's the person who mentored you early on in your career. It's the teacher who always made time for you. It's the school counselor who looked out for you, or the older couple up the street who took you in under their wing when you were new in town. Here at First Presbyterian Church, it's the friendships that developed over the years between Tim and Teresa Myrick and a slew of high school kids. And there are numerous other examples. Friendship looks different in every situation, but it's always characterized by affection and respect. But at the same time, while these words of Jesus are easy and happy, they're also difficult and disconcerting. Jill Duffield, the editor of Presbyterian Outlook, puts it this way: Jesus reminds his friends that he chose them, not the other way around. Therefore, those whom God has chosen become part of our circle of concern in ways we heretofore could not have imagined. Committee meetings, parties, worship, work, family dinners, everything just got a whole lot more complicated. Life just got a lot more complicated. I must now slow down, take notice, stop and abide, and they must do the same. We can't just do what we've always done. We can't presume we all know what's required or expected, hoped for or needed. Once the Holy Spirit gifts us with one another, we are called upon to accept, to nurture, to cherish our new God-given friends. We must be good stewards of our holy friendship. And the only way to do so is to follow Jesus' commandment to love one another. In other words, when Jesus calls us his friends, he draws us into this great wide network of his love for other people, whether we happen to like those other people or not. And as much as we may dislike it, we have to remind ourselves as often as need be that God has as much concern for the person with whom I am getting along least well in the world as God has for me. Some years ago, an anthropologist spent time in South Africa learning the habits and the customs of a particular tribe. One day, he proposed a game for the children to play. He took a considerable amount of candy and put it in a basket and put it under a tree, and then he stepped off several feet from the tree and drew a line in the ground. He explained to the children that they needed to wait behind that line for his signal, and when he said go, they were to run as fast as they could toward the basket. The first one to arrive would win the candy. So the children gathered behind the line. The anthropologist said, "Ready, set, go." But when he did, something unexpected happened. All of the children reached for each other's hands and ran toward the tree as a group. And once they got there, they shared the candy with one another. So the anthropologist was stunned. He asked why they had all gone together, especially if the first to arrive could have won everything in the basket. And one little girl answered, "How can any of us be happy if all the others are sad? How can any of us be happy if all of the others are sad?" It's the South African concept of Ubuntu. It means because we are, I am. South African Bishop Desmond Tutu shared that concept with us here in the Western world. Ubuntu theology recognizes that a person is human because of his or her relationship with other persons. In essence, it means that if I get rid of you, how can I live by myself? It's a radical notion in our do-it-myself world. I began by talking about the tribes on the reality show Survivor. I want to finish by telling you about another tribe. That's actually what they call themselves, the tribe. They're a group of friends, nearly 20 in number, all told, that rarely let a week go by without some sort of get-together, a meal, time around a fire pit, a work project. Not all of them can make it to every gathering because of schedules and such, but whoever can make it does. A couple of them work at the post office. A couple of them are school teachers. Another one's a project manager. Another one works in healthcare. Another one is a seamstress. Still another one owns a pawn shop. In other words, they come from all kinds of backgrounds, and it doesn't matter what they do. They range in age from 24 to 82. Some of them have known each other for decades, others for shorter periods of time. But what they have in common is an inspiring display of care and affection for one another. I became acquainted with the tribe a handful of years ago. This past week, I made my third hike up Mount LeConte with a dozen of them, where we stayed overnight at the lodge. And it could have been a relatively quick dash up the mountain for some folks, while others labored more. I won't tell you where I was in that. But it wasn't that way. There were times when we got stretched out along the trail because of taking pictures or what have you, but then we'd come back together. There were 2 or 3 who arrived at the top before the others, and those few dropped their backpacks and then went back down the trail to meet up with the others and take the backpacks of those who were really tired so that they would have an easier time up the mountain. And at the top, we gathered to celebrate, to have dinner, to enjoy a breathtaking sunset. All 13 of us stayed in the same cabin. I can testify that members of this tribe even snore in harmony. Coming down the mountain the next day was a similar experience to the day before. It doesn't mean there weren't particular individuals that were more high maintenance than others, or a couple of folks that tended to get on the nerves of others. Those things happen in every configuration of human beings on the earth. But the splendid thing is that the respect and the care and the affection remained nonetheless. Part of the responsibility of the church is to help build good friends. And Hope First Presbyterian Church is offering you an opportunity to do that through such things as the Holy Child groups, the welcome table, Bible study, and more. There are 2 particular opportunities I would lift up to you. The first is that of building relationships with our children and our youth. Why not become the mentor to them that someone was to you when you were younger? And the second opportunity is to continue the work of First Presbyterian Church long after you're gone. Legacy giving helps us to do what we feel God is calling us to do. Why not earmark a portion of God's gifts to you back to the church to continue the mission and ministry of this place? You'll be hearing a little bit more about that in a bit. Jesus said, "It was not you who chose me, but I chose all y'all and appointed you to go bear fruit that will remain." It is to live for something greater than ourselves. It is to grow love with our attitudes and our life choices. It's to reach outside our self-giving ways, self-serving ways, to be a community of friends, to be our second circle of kin. May it be so for you and for me. Amen.